So in this segment, we're going to be talking about this FT article, which talks about Brexit bureaucracy hitting the UK food and drink sales to the EU, sector warns. The FT do make a massive, I think, in my opinion, a massive mistake towards the end of this article, and when we reach it, we'll talk about it when it comes to talking about lorries and exports, which is a very rookie mistake from the FT, which is a good paper when it comes to financial stuff typically. So inconsistent and increasingly burdensome post-Brexit bureaucracy is blighting the food and drink sales to the EU, the sector warns, as it published analysis showing exports to the bloc were down 40% in February compared with a year last year, so February last year. So imports and exports have gone up slightly from January, but we can see that they're down 40% compared to February of last year, which is pretty bad. Some people will blame COVID, but obviously it's not just down to COVID, especially when you look at the specific numbers, which we will be doing. The UK Food and Drink Federation said on Monday that the latest UK government data painted a stark picture of the challenges facing companies and especially smaller businesses as they grapple with new veterinary and customs checks introduced in January 1st. I would argue that these are not new checks, these are the standard checks for third countries, which we've been a victim of because of our own actions, really. Our own bad energy is our undoing. So the federation, which represents more than 800 companies, said February exports were down to £578.7 million, down from £1 billion in February 2020. This was only marginally offset by an 8.7% increase worth £55.6 million in sales to non-EU countries in February compared to the same period last year. So you can see British exports to non-EU countries has gone up, which is a good news. But at the same time, all that talk about finding emerging markets clearly not working out because we've only just slightly increased them by 8.5% when, the exports to the EU have gone down by about 40%. Not to mention the fact that, some of the sales to new and emerging markets, you still have to do things like customs declarations and vet checks on certain products. So the arguments that the government make are just dumb. Also, how many people in these other countries can afford to buy British cheese and stuff like that in emerging markets? Sales of milk and cream were down 96.4% compared with February 2020, which is crazy. I guess you would imagine that cream and milk sales would be sold. You wouldn't make much profit off individual ones. You would make a profit off the mass sale. So obviously all of that stuff would have to be, vet checked, all the cows and stuff like that. So that could be why the sales are down so much, because it's not because the EU have lost the taste for, British milk and cream. It's because of the amount of customs and vet checks, which would be very expensive, I'd imagine, to do for the volumes that we were selling. So I'd imagine that's the key reason why these sales of milk and cream has gone down. And exports of chicken and beef down more than 75% compared with February last year. Again, are we going to try and claim that people within the EU aren't eating chicken and beef to the point where our exports are down, or are we going to finally accept that it's down to customs declarations and, more importantly, vet checks? This is February numbers, guys, by the way. It might rebound a bit in March because of the that's when we saw the first kind of impact of COVID, and also the fact that saw some of the closures of the hospitality industry. So it's going to be interesting to see how this year's March stats match up with last year's March stats. Well, the pandemic has been a factor in slowing trade, which the FT and other groups admit. The Federation said the clear sense from business was that Brexit was a driving force. So this is from businesses themselves. This isn't from, some random think tanks from Ramona's. This is actual businesses saying that Brexit is the problem here. Dominic Agudi, its head of international trade, said UK businesses continue to struggle with inconsistent and incorrect demands at EU borders. So again, that's a very strange and very bold claim to put it, because we know that different EU countries have different standards when it comes to importing goods. They have different rules on things like pallets and various other things, and that's up to individual EU countries. We were also a country, when we were a member of the EU, who had probably had our own rules that were different to France and Belgium and Germany. That's down to us to set specific rules for third countries. So the argument that this gentleman is making here, I think, is very fraudulent. Blaming the EU for inconsistent and incorrect demands. It's up to individual countries to set up the rules that for imports to their country for third countries. So I disagree with Dominic Goody there. Small businesses have been the hardest hit, which generally they are, due to in part the collapse of the small business model of lorries carrying goods from different suppliers. You got to think that, if you're just selling a small amount in one of those huge lorries, you can I can't remember the word now, but you'd bundle it in with other companies and you would fill up a lorry like that, which is way cheaper than sending a lorry with only a few things in it. It's not really worth the time for the lorry driver. They'll charge you a lot more for it. So we've got that bit. This has been rendered less practical post-Brexit because it multiplies the paperwork needed, and if anyone's paperwork isn't right, then even if your paperwork is right, your product is kept in transit for longer and may even be returned to you. So that means that the exporter, the business, loses out, but more importantly, the consumer who couldn't get the thing that they wanted won't buy from you again because they couldn't get the thing that they wanted. Why would you buy from a business which cannot give you the products they want in a timely manner? You'll go somewhere else, especially in the age of the internet and the fact that EU countries have multiple other countries they can source products from. And I would not be surprised if we see some savvier business people in the EU say, look, we can't buy these products from the UK anymore. We can start, making this stuff or growing this stuff here. I can see that happening as well. The organisation is calling for urgent meeting of joint UK-EU committees overseeing the post-Brexit deal. What are they going to do, pal? They're not going to achieve much, are they? Ridiculous. The figures are nonetheless an improvement with January, which isn't a big shock. Exports fell by 75.5% compared to last year. So anyone arguing, February's great is very stupid because February is not great. Compared to January, it's great, but compared to February of last year, it's not very good. So it says here, this is Goody talking again. The challenge is that one border official to the next might have different demands. What is acceptable in France is not acceptable in Belgium in the way you complete paperwork, Goody said. So it's not the EU's fault, these inconsistencies exist because of nation states. So his argument that, this is, inconsistencies on the EU side and this is the problem, yes, but these are nation states that can set up their own rules for third countries. So him blaming them is very stupid when he should be blaming the people who wanted Brexit and the ones who supported Brexit. So Goody's argument here, very dumb. But I suppose if he did start blaming the ones who wanted to do Brexit and, supported it, then I guess he wouldn't get as much support in the UK and maybe the government shuts him out because of it. But that's the decision that, Goody has to make. Another problem identified by the Federation is that exporters are sometimes being incorrectly required to provide special barcodes known as Murazin codes that are normally used by officials on the EU side to work out what import tariffs should be applied to baked goods and confectionery. Sorting out the codes can cost companies $500 per product, it said. So maybe this is a problem on the EU side and this is something the UK could figure out with the EU, but I'd be very surprised if the EU customs agents are making huge mistakes like this. But it does again show you that if we're a part of the EU, we wouldn't have this problem. But £500 per product, are you talking about per baked good? So per donut it's going to cost £500. That can't be right, can it? A further complicating factor is that on April 21st, the EU stiffened rules for when export health certificates or other, I don't know how to pronounce that word, attestations are required for processed foods such as lasagna and pork pie. So these are fully sort of finalised products that are going straight to the consumer. So it is a problem because you're getting multiples of one product. So how do you source, where the meat came from for the lasagna or for the pork pies? That's going to be a difficulty for, customs agents to deal with. That's something, the British government is going to have to, again, work with the EU to figure out. Confusion over paperwork can lead to goods being held up for hours or days. This is where the UK has to work with the EU to kind of help clarify these issues for exporters, to talk to the EU and say, look, if we want to export these ready-made products, ready meals, etc., what do we have to do to, enable them to have easy exports into the EU? That's something that, this is probably an issue that's mainly from, products going from GB to Northern Ireland. I can't imagine too many people in France or Germany or, heaven forbid, Italy buying British lasagnas or pork pies. Products coming into the UK from the EU face fewer barriers as Britain is only gradually rolling out the new system, despite the fact that we hold all the cards and we were prepared for this and we wanted for this. Despite all of those things, we weren't prepared for Brexit. The government kept saying, get prepared for Brexit, and we ourselves were not prepared as a country. So despite the persistent problem, so this is where the FT for me gets a bit iffy. So despite persistent problems, there are signs that the EU-UK trade is picking up. Data gathered by IRN research on the number of trailers and trucks and lorries passing between the UK and the EU by ferry shows that traffic across the short routes, including via the Channel Tunnel, was down merely 2%. In March 2021 compared with March 2020. So this is where the FT did something very stupid, and this is what Michael Gove's reasoning was. How can exports be down when there are still lorries moving through the Channel Tunnel and on the Dover-Calais crossing? Well, what's in the lorries? How full are they compared to last year? How much stuff is in them? Because some of these EU traders, were taking out empty lorries from the UK, which typically wouldn't have happened pre-Brexit because they don't want their lorries stuck in transit because of the delays that happened within Dover. They didn't want that. So what they did was they just took the lorries out, empty, so they wouldn't have to go through customs checks. So the argument they're making here that, there were loads of lorries, man, only down 2%. Compared to March last year. A very stupid argument, considering that Michael Gove made that argument, I think, in January when, exports were down by like 75%. So it's embarrassing from the FT here. Very embarrassing. By comparison, traffic was down 14.9% in February compared with the same previous year. But, traffic was down 14%, but we saw exports down by 40%, right? So, yes, trade might be heading more towards what happened last year. We might be looking at maybe a 30% hit to exports or maybe a 20% hit to exports, but that's still a huge hit to exports. Like, I don't understand why the FT decided to throw in this argument towards the end. They were doing so well, and they decided to, do something fraudulent and come out with a stupid argument. Come on, Financial Times, do better. People rely on you for actual business analysis. Like, James Brunsden, do better. This is some kid on YouTube, some punk, telling you that you come out with a stupid argument. Come on, man. So anyways, in conclusion, we can see that, despite the fact that the numbers are doing better in February compared to January, compared to last February, exports are down by 40%. And also certain products such as cream, let's see if we can find that. Milk and cream were down 96.4%, which means that those exports to the EU, that might be a dying industry of exports of milk and cream to the EU because of the fact that I think the profit would be made not on the individual products themselves, but really on the volume of trade. And you've got to imagine how much milk and cream, how much kind of milk you would need from a cow to mass produce milk and cream, and the fact that all of those cows would need to be vet checked, etc. You can see why these exports were down so much. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.